Welcome to Gooseberry Science and Education videos. I am your host, Atlas, and hanging out with me today is our mascot, Pip the Orange Gooseberry. Now, right off the bat, full disclosure, I'm an AI. But don't worry, I am simply a tool used to create better, smoother explainers without the need for tedious manual editing. Everything we are unpacking today is 100% factually accurate, built purely on rigorously vetted human-written sources. Today, we're tearing into a fascinating psychological and philosophical perspective on morality, strength, and human nature. It's deep, it's intense, and honestly, it's totally counterintuitive. We usually think we know exactly what makes someone good, right? But what if our fundamental definition of virtue is actually completely backward? Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever just assumed that being gentle, weak, or totally harmless means someone is automatically morally pure? As a society, we frequently equate the sheer inability to cause harm with being a genuinely good person. Just think about everyday life. We constantly praise children for being perfectly quiet and compliant, directly equating those specific traits with being good. But the sources we're looking at today challenge that common societal belief right out of the gate. We really have to ask ourselves, is a harmless person actually a virtuous person? Or are we simply confusing a lack of capability with a conscious moral choice?
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it dismantles this incredibly dangerous idea that being incapable of cruelty somehow elevates a person to a higher moral being. Let's look at the dynamic between two totally different types of people. On one hand, we have the harmless person. This is an individual who is fundamentally incapable of cruelty. They are physically, emotionally, or psychologically vulnerable. But on the other side, we have the morally good person. According to the literature, this is an individual who is absolutely capable of being dangerous, but, and here is the kicker, they exercise strict, unwavering self-control. The argument here is that elevating the harmless person to a pedestal of virtue is a massive mistake. Why? Because they aren't choosing to be peaceful. They literally just don't have the power or ability to be anything else.
This philosophy hits us with a rather uncompromising warning, straight from the source material. If you cannot be cruel, you are simply a naive victim to anyone who is. It's heavy, right? Basically, without the actual capacity to defend yourself, set firm boundaries, or push back against malevolence, a harmless person isn't actively choosing peace. They just don't have another option. Therefore, they aren't genuinely virtuous. They're simply naive. And they're naive because real, actual malevolence exists out there in the world. If you can't understand it or match its intensity when necessary, you're essentially just waiting to fall victim to the first truly cruel person you encounter. To truly wrap our heads around this, we have to look at the underlying psychology. Specifically, Carl Jung's famous concept of the shadow. The shadow represents the aggressive, dark, and heavily repressed parts of the human psyche. When we say repressed, we're talking about those impulses, resentments, and anger that society tells us are completely unacceptable, so we bury them deep down in our unconscious mind and pretend they aren't there. Jung theorized that every single human being has this dark side, no exceptions. The literature suggests that true self-respect and psychological wholeness require actively acknowledging this aggressive part of the psyche rather than burying it. Because at the end of the day, you absolutely cannot master what you refuse to acknowledge.
And this brilliantly illustrates that this process isn't an instant thing. It's a real evolution. The transformation begins when a timid, faceless individual finally decides to stop hiding. They begin to grow teeth, developing that necessary psychological edge and the capacity to bite back when their boundaries are threatened. But it doesn't stop there. The true complex work is integrating that dark, sometimes monstrous shadow right into your conscious identity. You accept that, yes, you have a capacity for aggression. By doing so, you reach the final stage, becoming a composed, capable warrior. You are no longer defenseless, but you aren't a monster either. You have harnessed your dark side into something productive and fiercely protective.
This flows perfectly into an assertion made by psychologist Jordan Peterson, which we are impartially examining today. The core idea is crystal clear. True morality requires the capacity for danger. Peterson's argument is that true virtue is not defined by a lack of danger. Look, if your peacefulness is just a default state because you are utterly powerless, that's not a moral achievement. It's just a circumstance. Genuine morality is about possessing the capacity for malevolence, having the actual ability to do serious harm, but consciously, deliberately, choosing to keep that capability tightly leashed.
So the crucial point is, how do you actually achieve this virtue? Well, it takes a deliberate roadmap. First, you must integrate your shadow, accepting those hidden parts of yourself. Second, you must gain the actual capacity for danger. But the vital differentiator, the absolute line that separates a literal monster from a virtuous hero,
is strict control. You must keep that newly found aggression disciplined. By mastering all of this, you gain the ability to defend yourself effectively. Integrating these dark traits is exactly what leads to genuine self-respect. It shifts your entire identity from being a helpless victim to being a capable warrior who actively, consciously chooses a peaceful path. Let's move to and see how this builds into an incredibly uncomfortable, yet absolutely essential realization. You share the capacity for terrible atrocities with the worst historical dictators. I know, no way, right? It's a seriously jarring statement, but it is vital to confront this reality. The potential for immense malevolence isn't just some quirk found in evil people in the history books. It is fundamentally wired into the human condition, which means, whether you like to admit it or not, it is wired right into you.
This leaves every single one of us with a critical choice, a real fork in the road. On one side, we have ignorance of your darkness. Listen, if you refuse to look inward and discover your own capacity for darkness, there is absolutely no possibility of bringing it under control. Zero. It will remain a massive, dangerous blind spot. But on the other side, we have understanding your darkness. It is literally only through understanding what you are truly capable of that you gain the power to properly control and regulate it. In everyday life, this means finally having the psychological fortitude to confidently stand up for a friend, firmly push back against a toxic boss, or draw an unshakable boundary in a relationship.
We want to leave you with a final, provocative thought. Will you remain a naive victim, or will you explore your dark side to become a composed warrior? It is a demanding journey of self-discovery, for sure, but it's one that completely redefines what it means to be a truly good person. We hope this explainer on the virtue of controlled strength has given you a totally fresh perspective on your own inner psychology. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe if you liked the content.